As we go inside, we step over to the art wall, which is by the fireplace. And here's my exhibition. This group of paintings became a story, and that story became a book. This was the first page in the book, and it's called The Two Rulers. And this painting in the background took weeks to do, but the two figures only took one day. So the background is very complex, many layers. All the paintings are multi-layered. At the beginning of the pandemic, I took out my Bible and looked at the book of Exodus and looked at the plagues in that story. And during that time, the Pharaoh and Moses were sparring for leadership, and they each called in their magicians to compete against each other and find out who was the most powerful. And I thought that was a great concept and wanted to build on that concept, but developing all my own characters and all my own magic tricks. Here I have a circular canvas. This is a bird turning into a ball that just popped right out of the picture. And here we have the Gaussian finches appear as the spectators, and on the bottom are old photographs from 1931 of a parade in Benton Harbor or St. Joseph, Michigan. Thank you for checking out my show. Here's a little bit about my painting process in my studio. My dog Frances is often with me. She's a great companion. My studio is on the second floor and I get wonderful afternoon sunlight. There's two big maple trees right out the window, so I think of it as my treetop studio. And I painted it pink, and it's a very pleasant room. I use a clear plastic container as my palette that has a lid that seals airtight. And I go through a lot of very small paintbrushes doing all these little tiny faces and characters. Of course, because it's acrylic, I have to squirt it with the squirt bottle quite frequently. And you close up the lid when you're done. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about the process of going from drawing to painting. I think that the drawings are often the most interesting, or at least very interesting, and I love the way they develop into the paintings. So that's what I'm going to show here. This first had a black and white value scale for the underpainting. The colors were applied with the clear, transparent glazes using the golden open. And so I'm getting those really beautiful, brilliant colors that you get with that paint. This was done during the, COVID experience and thinking of this sort of toxic soup underneath us and people dangling and suspended. But as I developed it into a painting, the people became supported rather than suspended. And each of the characters appeared in their own little space, but they were happy doing their own thing. And this turned into a very happy, joyful painting about expressing yourself even when you're in your own space. And during the past couple of years, these have been my best little models, and I have drawn them and painted them over and over in many different ways, and they were the basis for a lot of the paintings that you see. This was the first sketch in this series, The Tournament of Magic. You can see it's very gestural, and took it over to the canvas. There's that black antique paper on the canvas and then worked it up into very realistic renderings. First is my sister Diane. Second was a fellow I knew from college. The third, the drummer, is my son Josiah. After that is a memorial to a Navajo fellow, friend of mine's husband who passed away of COVID, and behind him is a Zuni ring dancer who passed from COVID at the age of 36. In the next painting, I worked on developing their magic tricks and let the costumes sort of come out of the gestures. Let the gestures happen, and the costumes just sort of a tightly rendered version of them. And here we can see it on canvas, and then the finished painting. We have a ring dancer, a juggler, and an atmosphere maker. The figures on the right and left I made up, but the central figure, Simon von Plutz, looks a bit like my father, and my grandmother's maiden name was Plutz. And he has spheres which become birds and then turn back into rubber spheres. The one that came out of the canvas is rather large in proportion to the other two paintings. And I had these 2 books of sketches from my time with the Cirque du Soleil, and I would draw very fast while the action was happening, and then the next day by memory go in and tighten up the sketches, add the details and the colors. This sketch ended up in this painting, the Tug of War, which ended up in the book. And always planning ideas, trying to figure out how to use these sketches. Like this one is another one that try to think, what could I do with it? And I'm also a Photoshop artist, so I put things in Photoshop, and then these ladies ended up in this painting. And you see the viewer is up in the air on this painting, almost as if they're sitting in a trapeze or hanging. And so this hanging theme is something I'm revisiting, like this fellow suspended, and the idea of a sort of a desperate suspended feeling. And then this clown popped in, and I kept trying to think what else I could do with that concept. So I put on my wedding dress and went and hung from a tree in the front yard and asked my husband to take pictures, and modeled for myself, did the sketch from those photos, and then that sketch turned into this painting on this very angst type of black and yellow background, and I have a blue skin and hanging from a swan. And I had a lot of good times developing these pictures, and it was a lot of fun thinking of the magic tricks and developing the props in different ways and the faces. Very enjoyable group of art to make. Then I got to the end, I said I have to have a conclusion. So I developed a character that was the winner and some judges. The judges end up female on the left, male on the right. And then this woman who is the winner, I thought I'd make a female winner, is sort of on a hovering disc. And she's doing her magic up in the air. What? Oh, she went through many, many changes. She started out as a rather Nordic-looking woman in a very simple pink dress and boots. As time went on, though, I made her costume much more elaborate and developed her into a more oriental looking character. I named her Metratron, Metra meaning womb or woman or mother, and Tron meaning to work. And she ended up with a very elaborate headdress. If you'd like any more information on my work, feel free to check out my website at art.org. Thank you.